Here's what's trending now on foodandtravelnation.com.
We're talking with Darius Coombs, Associate Director at the Wampanoag Indigenous Program at Plymouth Plantation. Welcome to the show.
Oh, thank you very much.
We wanted to talk with you today about Thanksgiving because people know all about the Pilgrims, but we wanted to get a different take. And we wanted to understand more about the American Indian contribution to Thanksgiving. What can you tell us about that?
Yeah, well, the Wampanoag people who are still around here when the colonists landed, they landed here back in 1620. And to go back a few years, back in 1616 through 1618, there was a major epidemic disease that swept through here that wiped out over 60-70% of the Wampanoag nation within a 2-year span.
Wow. Yeah,
it totally devastated the people, you know. You can just imagine all the leaders we lost, medicine people, councilmen.
Right.
So the landscape, political and traditional landscape, was probably a little bit different when the colonists landed here in 1620. At the time, one of the strongest Wampanoag communities was called Pokanoket. Mm-hmm. And there were probably about 70 communities all around Massachusetts and going into Rhode Island. And the Pokanokets were the strongest, and they were probably least hit by the disease because they were probably so far inland. But the leader of that community was Massasoit. Mm-hmm. And what happened, at that time, he was at war with the Narragansett, which were down in Rhode Island, south of Narragansett Bay.
Right.
And at the time, the Narragansett people saw all these Wampanoag people being killed off. You know, they had no idea, nor did we have any idea what that was, what the disease was, because we had never ever seen that before.
Right.
Very powerful Narragansett leader, Canonicus, pretty much said to himself, you know, hey, whatever that is up there going on, I'm going to let it take its toll, you know.
Yeah.
There was war going on for at least 3, 4, maybe 5 generations before there was any European contact here.
So the people came over from Europe, and then what happened?
Well, when the colonists landed here in 1620, they landed during a good time because for themselves, the disease that hit around here decimated this whole area, what's called Plymouth today.
Wow.
So this area was once called Patuxet. So when the colonists landed here, they found nobody living here. And the nearest living Wampanoag community was about 15 miles inland. A town was called Middleborough today. We call it Nemasket. But because of that plague, the Narragansett thought, well, let's start to attack, you know. So Massasoit, being a Wampanoag community in Pokanoket, needed an ally. So he came out in March of 1621 and formed an alliance with the colonists. And basically what that was, they said, hey, if you go to war, I'll help you out. And if I go to war, you help me out. Aside from that, we'll keep separate lives.
Yeah. Enemy of the enemy is my friend.
You know, you got two different cultures of people living the same way thousands of years, but they both needed an ally. There were Wampanoag communities. Unfortunately, what had happened, aside from the plague, there were ships coming over to taking slaves, and that happened.
Horrible.
So they needed an ally because there are close, nearby Wampanoag communities that had slavery going on. So they needed protection too. And everybody knew about Massasoit, how much power he had. He was a very powerful leader back then. So, like I say, he made an alliance with the colonists. I'll help you if you go to battle, and you help me if I go to battle.
What happened to your land?
Oh, geez. Well, where I'm from, I'm on Mashpee Wampanoag. And like I was saying, there's about, at one time, about 70 Wampanoag communities. And that's how you would describe yourself, from what Wampanoag community you're from. So Mashpee, where I'm from, was considered to be a reservation all the way up to 1870. And that's when it got incorporated into a town. So basically anybody can move down and pick up land and pay taxes and such. We, as a people, Mashpee was not federally recognized, I think, until, I think it was 2007. Only maybe 5 or 6 years ago by the U.S. government.
Because a lot of the tribes had their lands taken from them.
Yeah, well, that's pretty much what happened because you can just imagine when 1620 rolled around how much chaos it was with all the people dying off from disease and such. Mm-hmm. It wasn't a pretty time at all, you know?
Yeah.
That's why that alliance was made, to help each other out. And because of that treaty that was made in March of 1621 with the two sides, in the following fall, because they did learn how to plant, you had that very famous story on how Squanto taught the colonists how to plant, how to put a fish in the mound, then plant your corn seed.
Right.
That's true. You know, absolutely true. And Squanto was the only known surviving Patuxet.
Wow.
You think about it, why he was the only survivor, and the reason was he wasn't here. Back in 1614, he was taken as a slave over to England and lived there for about 5 years. Then came back over as a guide interpreter in 1619. And that plague that came through happened between 1616 and 1618. So when he came back over, he found out all those people died off, dead. He did stay with the colonists when they landed, and that's when they didn't learn how to plant corn. He knew how to speak English at the time, too. He also knew how to speak his native tongue, of course.
Wow.
Basically told him where to go and where not to go. But going back a little bit, that harvest fest, that was known as Thanksgiving today, that happened, Squanto taught the colonists how to plant corn. That happened probably, we don't even know the exact date. It happened late September, early October, maybe late October. We're not even sure, definitely,
There wasn't really any turkey at the first Thanksgiving, was there?
It's possible, but they never mentioned that at all. They never mentioned turkey being at that feast.
Right, yeah.
They don't even mention Massasoit being invited. In the primary sources, it states that Massasoit showed up with 90 of his men. You talk about 90 warriors he showed up with.
Yeah, it's a lot of warriors.
And at that time, there's only about 50 colonists,
Yeah.
So we pretty much, we outnumbered them 2-1,
Yeah.
And during
you should have kicked their asses back then, just saying.
Yeah, obviously, if we knew what went on back then today, obviously it might be a little different. But at that time, we needed an ally. But what happened, Massasoit sent his men out hunting, and they came back with 5 deer. So you think of the main staple of the diet for meat, and that was considered to be deer. The feast went on for about 3 days.
Deer tastes so much better than turkey anyway.
I like it better than turkey myself.
Yeah.
But, it tastes a lot better. My favorite fowl is goose myself, but that's what they mentioned. They mentioned when Massasoit sent his men out, they came back with 5 deer, and they mentioned fowl being at that feast, and of course there were vegetables there. If you have to look at it, I've been doing this for quite a while myself, over 20 years, and it was a political dinner. It was a business dinner to keep the alliance going on between the two sides.
It's so interesting because I don't think people really get the backstory about that. And I really appreciate your frank discussion about it, because I think when people think about Thanksgiving, they think it was like this very structured event with pilgrims and Indians coming together, American Indians, and having this perfect turkey and all this stuff. And it really wasn't like that at all.
No, you got to put yourself back in the 17th century.
Yeah.
You're talking about language barriers. You're talking about cultural barriers. You're talking about 2 different people.
Yeah.
But at that time, they needed each other.
Absolutely.
But that was what's very important to know is Pokanoket is one Wampanoag community. And like I said, there was close to 70 of them. And that alliance that went on between the 2 peoples was only with Pokanoket in Plymouth Colony.
Wow.
So you think about the other communities around there, they had their own saying what they wanted to do. They also knew how much power Massasoit had. And Massasoit's community was about 40 miles west of Plymouth Colony. That's one thing a lot of people don't know either. You're talking about maybe a 2-day walk away. You're talking about East Coast in Plymouth.
Yeah.
And his community was near Rhode Island.
Right.
In Rhode Island. But it's what it's called Warren, Rhode Island today. So
I've been there.
It's quite a distance.
Yeah.
Quite a distance away.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much for talking to us about this. We wanted to get a little background, and where can people get more information about you and what you guys do?
I'll go onto our website, Plum Plantation.
Okay.
And we have plenty of interesting facts and history about, and come see us, We're here through Thanksgiving. We open up once again in mid-March. We have specialized programming during the winter.
Well, just so people know, it's PLIMOTH plantation.org.
Yeah. And like I said, they never mentioned turkey at that feast. It's possible. It was a common bird hunted for. It could have been a goose, could have been duck, could have been partridge, could have been quail. So
cool.
It might have been turkey.
Could have been like a heritage turkey. I don't know, but I guess we'll never know. But anyway, we appreciate your time. Thank you so much for joining us today. You've been listening to the Food Nation Radio Network. We'll be right back.
Listen to over 100 previous interviews on Elizabeth's website, foodandtravelnation.com. Be sure to like, share, and comment about the stories that mean the most to you. Join us for the live feed of Food and Travel Nation, Saturdays at 8 a.m. Eastern, 7 a.m. Pacific, on foodandtravelnation.com and on iHeartRadio.